Okay, so let's do a quick recap, because if this is the first time you're seeing this video or this boat in this series, none of this will have made sense. But since its construction, we have been running wires, running conduits, running bleed-offs, running the spots where we were going to eventually have all the wiring tied to, which is the power points. This video will cover all the specifics about that, all the specifics about batteries, what type of batteries you need to use, what type of wire you need to use, everything from the breakers to the entire layout, and we will be installing an onboard battery charger as well. It's really important that you get your entire wiring layout perfect before you even get to this point. This is like the last in series. Though it is the most important, it is the last in the series of the wiring that you need to worry about. All your conduits, all your layouts, all your wiring, it needs to be on point. All your switches, all your fuses, everything laid into the point, but eventually it needs to tie to a power source. So we'll start this video from the main battery well, which we stuck right at the very end of the deck, and that will be holding the battery that powers our entire electric system, running all of this. And then we will also cover how we handle our trolling motor setup, where we place the batteries, why we place the batteries a certain way down this boat to give it equal balance and make sure it rides the best it possibly can. The wiring process for this boat was complicated, but in the end, it's one of the best that I have ever done. And I'm so very happy to debut it to you today. And remember, all these parts that you see in this video can be found on my Amazon store. The boat's right at 80 to 90% done at this point when we're actually worrying about the batteries, where we have the wells designated for it. This is the back well, right at the very, very back of the deck, right at the center 50 line. For our auxiliary battery that we're going to be running to power the entire boat, minus the trolling motors, we will be running an Everstar Group 24 deep cycle, not the MS. The MS is a marine battery, but it is not a deep cycle battery. It will run flat very, very quickly. That is a cranky battery for a motor. You want the deep cycle battery here on the right. Do not get the MS. They also carry Group 27 and Group 29 size deep cycle batteries. The Group 29 weighs almost twice as much as the Group 24. The Group 24 batteries weigh around 45 pounds apiece. The Group 27 deep cycle batteries weigh a little bit more, but they also have a lot longer runtime. So it's just something to consider in your overall project. Right here, we are cutting rubber matting because in our battery well, I mean, that's all encased by aluminum, and aluminum is very conductive. So to prevent any sort of fire or short, we are running gator skins, rubber matting all over this stuff. This is very thick and very resistant to any sort of electrical conduction. We covered as much of the aluminum as we possibly can. With that out of the way, now we mount our breakers. We are running two breakers specifically, one for the power outlet and another one for the electric start, since he will be running a 50 horse Mercury 2020 with an electric start feature. So we ran those two holes we ran down there with wire grommets. Those were to run leads to both of these, but both of those will have the same breaker. I found this breaker at Walmart. It's an Atwood 50 amp breaker, and they work very, very well. We ran these in the bash tracker, and they actually prevented the exact same fire that took down the tracker to begin with. And I know this is also prevented fires in the Lumacraft. The breakers are a no-brainer. They are $10 at Walmart, and I think I have them on my store somewhere. You can find them. There are also better ones that have covers over the terminals, but because these don't have covers, we will be running liquid tape over them. This stuff. We will be coating it red because these are specifically interrupting the power wires of both leads. You only have to do this to the power lead. The negative ends just go straight to the battery. We'll also be running a Pro Sport or Pro Mariner 3-bank battery charger. Because these leads are not that long, and because we have a fairly long conduit that's running all the way to the trolling motor batteries, we're going to have to splice two of these wire connections and run longer leads. But this will charge all of our batteries through one plug. We will also be installing a wall plug that the conduit charges right in. So when you park your boat in your garage or wherever it is, all you got to do is stick in an extension cord and your boat's charging. When you plug it in, it should light up. And when you connect to all your batteries, it should give you a readout for all the batteries in terms of their status. We ran leads, we ran marine grade wiring, and we use self-soldering heat shrink connectors to run the extensions. This was a pretty deep extension. This was an extra 16 feet of wire with 8-foot connections for both. We ran this for 2, running through the main conduit down in the section. Now that we've ran these wires, we're going to start running them into the main conduits that we debuted earlier in the video, as we ran those long ago for this exact purpose. Now that we've got that out of the way, we need to space and complete the trolling motor battery setup. We're running 2 Group 27 deep cycle batteries for this setup, so he can have a decent amount of weight reduction, yet still have a fairly good run time for the both. We're running this over a pedestal / hatch combo. We've been running these pretty effectively because they're a great way to solve a lot of the issues with just space, overall space. Compacting space, but the bigger deal is we need to make sure that's safe and that the batteries clear the pedestal mount so there's no fires. We also need to give it an actual floor. Now this is an HDPE tote, but that HDPE tote, obviously it's plastic and not very durable to stand alone, but it is encased in foam, so it's actually very stiff and rigid. So in this point, we just need to give it an actual firm floor. So again, we're taking a sheet of aluminum. We are skinning it with rubber matting with gator skins here. The idea here is to get this mat with the non-skid rubber matting in conjunction with D-rings, and we stick that down there in the floor. Before we stick it in the floor, we're going to have to fill up the gaps a certain way. We're going to have to take care of that with foam, so water can't just stay down there trapped underneath this aluminum floor. Once we do that, we'll be able to run tie downs, and we'll be able to run other angled pieces to keep the batteries in place so they don't shake off, so they don't move around, so no wires get pulled and tugged, and no battery lugs get separated. All those things will happen if your system isn't perfect and isn't tight and doesn't stay where it's supposed to stay. So it fits in here very well. But this tote, as many other totes out there that are kind of molded, they have those lines down there. If we don't fill those lines with something, water will just get down there eventually, and it'll render the draining feature in this hatch pretty useless. So we're filling up all the gaps right there where the aluminum sheet will stay, and that will keep water out from underneath that, and that'll force it down there. That's the only time that I will ever use gap filler inside a boat. It's not a good component to use inside a boat for other reasons, but for this, it'll do. Because the batteries will obviously shake around, we are going to go ahead and rivet 3/4 angled pieces here to keep them from moving in on each other and keep them from ever touching that pedestal mount. Because in foresight of this project, I didn't think to put a thin aluminum sheet directly underneath the tote so I could rivet the floor directly down underneath the tote. Now if I did it that way, the rivets would just pull right through the plastic and it would be pointless. So what we're going to do, because we kept the original walls of the bench seat in the front, we are just going to rivet angle joints right down on the subfloor to hold it through the bench seat. So there's our drain port we put eons ago. There are D-rings that hold right outside the battery. The foam is seated outside so water can't pit in underneath that flooring. So the false floor there will work fine. The only addition that I wanted to do and that I had time for at the moment for this video was I put a wood block there. So the batteries did need a spacer. Otherwise, the tie down was kind of crunching the batteries forward because there was no other way to secure the ends of the floor. So again, fail. Run a false floor underneath the tote. That way you don't have that problem. But now that we got past that, now we can start fixing up the wiring and finishing up this process. Just how we ran breakers for the electric start and all the auxiliary power to the boat, we are running another breaker here. This is a 60 amp breaker for the trolling motor. Breakers save lives. If you don't have breakers in your boat, remember, it's not a matter of if, it's when it's going to happen. And when it happens to you, you want a breaker. For most 12 volt trolling motors, 8 gauge wire is required, but this is 6 gauge Anchor Marine wire. It is the best stuff you can get, and this will ensure that our motor runs a lot cooler, as it is also a 24 volt motor. And we are running heat shrink tubing, but this is heat shrink tubing with an adhesive that's inside, as we just showed you. So not only does it shrink around the wire to keep water out, but that adhesive completely seals it off. So it's not even an option for water to get in there, because water will actually eventually get into regular heat shrink without any sort of adhesive backing the ends. We were putting them over the copper ends. Some guy from the battery store told me that tin copper lugs actually create more resistance to the connection. I don't know how true that is, but I took his advice and I got regular copper lugs. They're not tin copper, so I don't know, tin copper wire on regular copper lugs. I don't know if that was a fail, but he was the expert. I took his word for him. What I do know, and what I can tell you though, is that once those terminals are exposed, that's where a lot of fires happen. So we're doing our best to cover those terminals. When you buy the batteries, they have a stock terminal cover for the power end. I just cut that in half with an X-Acto knife, and I only exposed the screw ends. We're only going to be using the screw ends for this setup. It has the lug ends there for like charging, but unless you're going to be running a setup that needs those charging, those are just like a fire waiting to happen. So we douse those in liquid tape, and we give them 2 or 3 coats. After you coat those terminals and those breakers with like 2 or 3 coats of liquid tape, that is tough stuff. That is tougher. That's just as tough as any sort of like wire coating out there. And here for the main power battery, we are simply replicating what we did up there for the front batteries for the trolling motor, only we're just running one single Group 24 battery. One single Group 24 deep cycle battery should run all your electronics for days. Like it should last for quite a while. Definitely the whole tournament day. If you're running a whole tournament load, I don't know why you need a bigger battery than this. Unless you're, I don't know what you'd be running in there, like a sound system, then you probably would need a bigger battery. Also, because all the local snowbirds in the area bought every Walmart battery on the planet when they came here, and the only one was left was this Group 24 MS, I had to like choke up and get it. And I will tell you, during the demonstration of all the features, this battery went dead pretty quick. It didn't even last like an hour. So it was definitely terrible. Don't get the MS batteries again. I cannot tell you enough. Like if you go and get an MS battery after this video, it's on you. I do also want to note that there are better chargers out there, and there are chargers that actually help your battery last longer. They have like setups. I'll be demoing one of those here pretty soon. I'm very, very excited to demo one of those. And there are also better batteries out there. If you go to a legit battery store, you will find way better batteries that will last you a lot longer than these Walmart batteries. You'll get about a year of use out of batteries. I generally have to switch these out every spring. Every spring I need new batteries. It's like clockwork. But they last for a year. I mean, $75 for a year of use, not so bad. The one thing I didn't show you is that plug, which just installs any sort of sidewall or side panel, or even right at the top of your deck if you want, but you just literally have to drop that right through the hatch, and then it plugs right into your battery charger, and then you have a direct wall port for your extension cord right outside of the boat. So overall success. The only thing I'm missing is how I rigged the switch panel. Not a whole lot of difference from all the other ones, other than this is the absolute cleanest wiring setup that I've ever had. The most minimal convolution, everything. So I will be demoing a little bit how I did that, and as I keep putting out better videos here for the electronics, I'm going to go ahead and start stepping down and retiring a lot of my older videos. I'm also going to start doing that for a lot of my older videos as I push out new stuff. My next video will be about weight, because I've been called out saying that my stuff is unsafe because I called out some other people saying their stuff was unsafe. The Facebook group actually tried to impeach me, which was hilarious. So my next video will be justifying to you and explain to you just how much weight is in one of these boats. I mean, is a kit like this way too much? Is it overly dangerous? What do you guys think? Give me your thoughts on that, because I will have my rebuttal for that and my rebuttal for my alleged impeachment. So we'll be getting to all that later on. Check me out on Facebook, guys. I mean, even though they try to impeach me, it's a great group. Check me out on Instagram as well. We are 10,000 and strong following there. Check out the TBNation Tournament Fishing. Check out my Patreon if you want to help support and fund projects like this. It's really mainly through patrons. Without you guys, I couldn't do cool stuff like this. I'm entirely grateful. Thank you all for everything. Subscribe and leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video. It helps more than you ever know. Thanks.